All right, thank you very much. We're being joined by Bruce Langford. Bruce, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, nice to be here. How are you today?
Doing good. So let's go. What area did you grow up in as a kid, and what type of things got you excited in high school?
Where did I grow up as a kid? Do we have an hour?
I know there's a lot of schools, but the general area that you grew up
I
in.
was born in London, Ontario. I moved to Camano, BC. I moved from Camano to Kitimat. I moved from Kitimat to North Van to Richmond, Richmond to Vancouver West Side, yes. Then to Saanich, then to Victoria, then back to London, then to Calgary, then to North Calgary, then to Burnaby, and spent most of my years growing up in Burnaby after that. That was grade 9 by then.
So I think that's a good thing to share, because I think a lot of people find different reasons to complain about stuff, and they kind of get in their own way. And if you can overcome that many moves and still turn out okay, it's pretty nice, I think. So you go to high school, you spend most of your time in Burnaby, you decide to get your degree and become a teacher. What'd you get your degree in?
History.
And what made you choose history, out of curiosity?
I went back to university after I was married. I was at BCIT trying to be a computer programmer, and had to do a lot of accounting stuff there. And I was working full time, was doing that at night, and I hated it. And my wife said to me, "You're not very happy with your job, what you're doing." I said, "I just hate this accounting. It's just boring and mundane." And she said, "You should have been a teacher. You like to coach. You were coaching I was coaching at the time. And you should have been a teacher. You love history. You read history all the time." And I said, "Yeah, but we're married." And she said, "Yeah, but I have a good job. You can go back to school and go for it." And so I went back to school then, and that's how it all happened.
Which, for all the people that we keep interviewing, everybody keeps showing a trajectory of, I don't really know where I'm going, and then I decide where I'm going, and it may not go like a smooth uphill climb. It kind of changes trajectory all the time. So that's a very interesting story for sure. Then you decide to become a teacher. Where do you end up going to teach right off the top?
Well, I did a practicum in Langley, and when I did the practicum in Langley, they tried to figure a way to hire me. So the principal kind of, I created got some money for an honors program, and then he freed some teachers up for that, and he then had me taking each of their jobs while they had the time off to work on the honors program. And so I did some English and science and math and socials, and then that kind of ran out, and they said they would try to hire me for the next year. And when the school year started, they told me we can't do it officially until school starts, when we get in our new numbers. The new numbers came in, and they were actually 40 lower, and they said, "We're not going to be able to hire you." I kind of panicked and went home and said to my wife, "I'm not getting the job where we thought we were getting the job." And I looked in the paper, and there was a job in Vancouver Island North in a place called San Joseph Bay, on a military base. And I took it. I went there for a year. Very interesting year. And then at the end of that year, my wife was fashion coordinator at BC at the time for Sears, and really nothing to do in northern Vancouver Island, and decided to come back, and I got a job in Mission, and then I worked in Mission for many years after that, 18, 20 years.
And so when you started working in Mission, you didn't start with basketball. You started with just kind of doing other things. How did basketball come to fruition?
Well, there's two little funny stories with that. My interview for Mission was in Delta with Dallas Christophily, who was the vice principal in Delta, who was getting the job in Mission the next year. And when we did the interview, her principal was banging on the outside door with a basketball the whole time of the interview, trying to be funny and distract or whatever. But it was a basketball the whole time. When I got the job, Paul, my brother, was a coach of basketball, and he'd been telling several people that Bruce has just gotten a job in Mission. And Brian Fittker, who was a coach of Mission Senior, said to Paul, "Oh, that's fantastic. He's getting the junior high. That's good. I'll have a feeder finally with the guy who coached basketball." And Paul started laughing and said, "He doesn't coach basketball. He's a volleyball coach."
Volleyball. There you go. Yeah, Teresa actually told us that she made you coach volleyball. That was a funny story for sure. So anyway, so you're a volleyball coach, and then what happens?
Well, the first day of school, they asked all the teachers on staff, one of the PE department heads got up and said, we need coaches. We don't have any coaches, you new people who's willing to coach this year. And they took some names and stuff. And then they said, well, we don't have anybody for volleyball. Will anybody do volleyball? And I put up my hand and said, I do boys volleyball. And another guy said he wanted to do boys volleyball. And I said, okay, well, I'll do whatever you want. And so they said, well, will you do girls volleyball? And I said, sure. And that's when it started. And then a few weeks later, they asked, for basketball coaches. And I said, well, I could do that. I might watch my brother play, and I know some UCLA high post offense. And I had done basketball I'm embarrassed by how I did it, but I did basketball when I was a student teacher in Langley. So I did basketball too. And then I did track.
There you go. What did you do track?
And I did jumping, high jump. Did that for those three things for a little while.
So one of the cool things about your story is there's actually quite a few very good coaches that ended up being in this small little area in Mission. So tell us about how you take the girls basketball team. I'm assuming the team's not very good. Is that accurate?
It was accurate. The school, we were very, very good in volleyball when I got there, but the elementary feeder system was phenomenal. All the elementary schools were big in volleyball, and they had the kids were the PE classes in volleyball were miles better than the volleyball teams I'd coached in Langley before my first year of teaching. The PE classes were better than the junior teams in Mission. So we did in those days we had the Upper Fraser Valleys, and we went to the Upper Fraser Valleys in grade 8 of my very first team in volleyball. My basketball team that I coached, no, we got pounded by MEI, by Abbey Junior. We got pounded. Yeah.
So you start to, what makes you turn the switch? So, you end up having arguably the greatest run as a high school coach in maybe the history of Canada. What ends up happening to get it from getting pounded by everybody to go into the top? Kind of, I know you started at one school, then another school. So give us like the whole little story of how that happened.
Well, I think that for me, basketball coaching was a challenge, and I had to go home every night and read and then watch videotapes of how things were taught and how things were done. And for me, it became a puzzle of learning, whereas in volleyball, I kind of thought I knew how to coach volleyball. So the challenge seemed far greater in basketball. Barry Stewart liked kind of the enthusiasm that my kids played with and stuff, and he kind of became a very valuable mentor to me in terms of he invited me to start a camp with him called Running Gun Camp. And we started it up, and I would go do it every summer. And I would learn an awful lot of that camp because we'd have a lot of guest coaches in who would take pieces. And I learned a ton from that. I had a very good group of kids that I then went from grade 8 to grade 9 to grade 10 with. And I was still a junior and was a senior then. And Paul took those kids over for senior because we didn't have a coach at the time of the senior. And then I started with another group, and I ended up taking that group through all the way to the senior because the schools ended up merging by then. And we just built it with hard work. We got in the gym. We tried to get the kids motivated. We used to take the kids to BC's to watch Sue Uwanek, who was a great player from the north, and we'd all get in the cars and shuffle off and go watch other people play. We would take them up to SFU and watch the SFU teams play. And we just tried to make a basketball culture. And I think starting off, it was just hard work. And as time went on, I kind of learned, I thought, some of the pieces of the puzzle that were more needed to be able to be successful at it.
And then where does UFV play into it? Where you coached UFV for a couple of years? What in the timeline? Where does that happen?
So I went. I was frustrated at Mission because when Mission turned into a senior, I coached the senior girls, but I also coached the grade 8 girls because nobody would coach the grade 8 girls. So I ended up coaching both teams, and I felt like I was kind of battling a place that didn't really care about what was happening. So I'd had some, I've been a couple of times been asked to move schools, and I was being, I guess in a way, recruited to an Abbotsford school. They asked me if I wanted to come and take over their learning assistance program and run their basketball program. And around the same time, I got a call from Hatzick Secondary asking me if I'd be interested in coming to Hatzick. And I thought, I don't really know a lot of people in the Abbotsford area, but I do know the district superintendent in Mission's a good guy. This person's a good guy. The principal here, I know he used to be the principal of our junior high. Maybe it's a safer bet. So I went to Hatzick. And when I went to Hatzick, I had a group of kids that I was to take up through, and also had a couple players that had moved from Mission Secondary to Fraser Valley College, and Fraser Valley had Mike Hind there coaching, and he somehow, I'm not sure how it all happened, but asked me if I'd be interested in coming and helping and doing whatever. And so I went to Fraser Valley College at the same time that I had a junior team moving up through the ranks at Hatzick. So that was like 8-9 years. I was 6 years at Mission Junior, 3 years at Mission Senior. That was the next piece of the puzzle, the next couple of years.
Hatzick. And then you start having some pretty good teams while you're at Hatzick. And then a new school is created, Heritage Park, and you end up deciding you're going to go coach at Heritage Park. Tell us a story of what happens there to kind of take you guys to the next level. And we're talking, it kind of turns magical. What happens there?
Well, let me just say something about Hatzick, because Hatzick changed one of my pieces of my puzzle. When I was when you were in Mission and at Hatzick in the first couple of years, you always wish that some grade 6'5" girl would walk through the door of the school and register and change your life, because you'd have a post finally, a real post, right? And at Hatzick, the counselor used to come in every time a girl would come into the school. He'd come racing into my room to tell me we got a new girl. We got a new girl. Anyway, when he came in and Joby McKenzie was coming to the school, he was all excited and ecstatic. And Joby was probably the last time we wished that we were happy that anybody came, because everybody started accusing me of recruiting. And then it became a nightmare, not a good thing to look forward to. So then you used to be terrified if anybody walked in the school, be like, please leave, please get out. Because with Joby, we won a provincial championship when Joby came. We had a great core of kids there without her. Some of the Mission kids that I had coached in Mission and moved over to Hatzick when I went to Hatzick, not right away. They waited a year and then came a year after. And I got some flack for that. And so anyway, at Hatzick, we did win a provincial championship with a very great group of kids. One of the things that happened at Heritage is as I got hired to Heritage, and the school was supposed to open and got canceled for a year. And the opening year would have been a really good year, because the group that I had at Hatzick, my second wave at Hatzick was going into grade 10, and they'd be going to grade 11 and 12 for senior, which would have allowed them to go to Heritage easily. It was a natural transition for 11 and 12. It had always been that way in the district till just a few years before. Then when the school was not opened on time, and that meant these kids would be transferring to grade 12 for their final year, and not many kids change schools for their grade 12 year. Most of them graduate with their friends and all those kinds of things. So anyway, I went to the team and I said, look, I'm transferring to Heritage next year. I expect you all to do whatever you want to do with your school lives and your things. I have to make a schedule for Hatzick, and I had to make a schedule for Heritage, and I'm just wanting to know where any of you will go. So once you've decided where you want to go, let me know, and I can make an appropriate schedule for each of the teams. And anyway, a couple of them came up to me at the meeting and said, well, of course I'm going wherever you're going. I'll go wherever you go. So if you're at Heritage, I'm at Heritage. And when I went to Heritage, I thought I finally had the formula for having a successful program. And I thought that formula included having opportunities for kids who just wanted to have high school fun playing basketball, to have a fun team to play on, and people who wanted to develop and get serious at basketball to have a place to develop and get serious, and to have a system within that to promote and move kids along at the speed with which they most appropriately should be playing at, because there's advantages to playing up and there's advantages to playing down. And so we kind of broke the mold of grade 8, grade 9, grade 10 senior basketball and created a new mold. And I was pretty pleased with it when we got there to set it up.
What was it?
Well, basically we said we were going to have the serious side and the fun side. The fun side would start with really grades 6, 7s, 8s, 9s, or 10s who just wanted to enjoy basketball and work at getting better at their skills. And so we will create a system whereby they can all play at whatever level. So we would basically run Friday nights, 35, 45 kids. We divide them into teams. We play a lot of 4-on-4. We'd have our serious team organize it, coach it, referee it. People were allowed to, then we would have a fun older team for school. We had a serious younger team, junior team, and a serious senior team. People who just came to the program and wanted to be in the developing young team could also practice with the junior team if their practice abilities didn't take away from the practice environment. By the same token, the junior ones could practice with the senior team if they didn't take away from that environment. The only rules were you had to be doing your best in school and you had to be trying your hardest on the court. And it kind of went from there. So most kids had about 4 hours of basketball a day.
That'll get your teams a lot better for sure. So it's one of the things I try to tell kids is it takes what it takes. So if you want to be average, it doesn't take that much. But if you want to be good, it takes a lot more. And then if you want to be spectacular, it's like way up here. And it seems odd when you explain to normal people what spectacular actually takes. And so let's say I'm a really good player and I'm in grade 9 at your school and and I'm going to play on the senior team that year. What else am I doing? So I got practice for 2 hours every day. What else is happening after that? So a lot of kids do their 2 hours and then they say, okay, I'm good. What's now? But at your place, when you guys were at Heritage, what did a grade 9 kid who would be very good end up doing?
Well, first of all, we'd have a discussion and say that, do you really want to be very good? Because I have a bias and I believe you can only be very good at 2 things. You can't be very good at 4 things. You can't be very good at 6 things. You can be very, very good at 2. That's probably not true. I probably don't feel quite strongly about that now as I did then, but that's what I kind of used to preach. And my point was that, first of all, you need to be a student. So you need to be the best you can in the classroom. And if it's going to be basketball, then we have a serious approach to basketball. And you can choose to be in it, or you can take the fun approach. So if they took the serious approach, we would tell them that the gym is open in the morning, depending when at Heritage, pre-Kim Smith or post-Kim Smith, because before Kim came, we were really only about an hour and a half before school. And when Kim came, she wanted it opened earlier, so we moved that up earlier. So we were now more 2 hours before school every day.
Yeah, the best players seem to change the rules every time. They're like, no, we need more.
Well, you try. I believe that you had to model commitment, and so if they asked for more commitment, it was pretty hard for me to say no. You're not getting more. I can remember driving home thinking, Kim, I get up so early in the morning now. I don't know if I can get up any earlier in my own head, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so we would say to them that mornings were never mandatory. Never, but there was a strong pull by a group of them that were always there. What they did was never mandatory. I had 20 minutes of basically 2-ball drills to start off a group of people. And if we had if we had a new grade 9, we would have one of the seniors lead them in their 2-ball drills. We would then take it from there, and different people would work on one-on-one attack skills, one-on-one playing, maybe the 2-on-2, 3-on-3, whatever the case may be. In Teresa's days, Teresa always tried to get everybody to just play. She she didn't really want to do all the ball handling. She didn't really want to do all of the fundamental pieces build up. She just wanted to play, play, play. And she would go around and say, come on, here, you guys finish that. Let's play. Let's play. And she'd be off playing by herself at a hoop somewhere,
Right.
or whatever. But they're different. You know, Kim Smith wanted drill, repetitively the same drill for hours until she thought she'd perfected a skill, and then she'd move on. And Teresa was a not want to drill, I want to play kind of person. So anyway, they had the freedom to do all those things. There was nothing preset of what they had to do in the morning. We were also open Sunday for several hours, where a lot of the old alumni kids would come back, or kids that I'd coached at other schools would come back, and guys would come, and we would have games all day for extended period of time on Sundays. And then and during this fall, as I said, we have Friday nights where we'd have 3 hours, and the older kids would all work with the younger kids. And went 4-on-4, and it was open to other kids from other schools. And we'd have that in the spring. And then during the season, we would have the morning, and then we'd have the little kids practice right after school, and the oldest kids would come to that, and then they would leave that when the juniors practice to go have something to eat. But the best of the youngest kids would stay with the juniors in practice, and then the best of the juniors would stay with the seniors when the seniors came back to practice after that. So everybody was getting 3 or 4 hours of practice, as well as whatever open time they took advantage of in the morning. In the off-season time of the year, Mike Miller did an outstanding job of plyometrics and weights with our kids, and put them through all kinds of let's try to be better athletes. So we had off-season stuff too.
I mean, I actually spent a decent amount of time around then in Mission, and I remember not very many people living in Mission. But if it's not like now, I bet you the population's probably doubled in Mission since, let's call it, 95. And so you don't have that many people, but in this nice little group area, you had Teresa Kleindienst, who spent pretty much her entire life on the national team. You've had Kim Smith, who's done pretty much the same thing. You had Danny Langford, who was a big-time player at university and played on junior national teams, and blah, you know, she's an unbelievable resume. You had Lisa Sigerson, who was arguably better than all of them. You had Julia Wilson, who was a high-level university player. You had Katja Fuse, who was a high-level university player. You had Sarah Stroh, who played down in the States as well. Like, the list keeps going. I'm sure I'm missing lots of people. But, you know, clearly the formula was you got to spend a hell of a lot of time in the gym. But if you do it, you can do just about anything you want. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, we kind of tried to believe that you could do anything you want. I think one of the important things you said, you have to spend a lot of time in the gym, and we were really big on mental headspace and vocabulary. And so it wasn't you have to, it was you get to. You're at a place where you get to be in the gym as often as you want to be in the gym, and therefore you can take advantage of this opportunity. And other people are, you know, I saw your interview with Katja, and she had a piece where she came to the school from another school, and you know, she kind of told the story of, I explained all this to her about what was happening, and you've got to be taking care of school, and you got to be taking care of yourself, and you got to be, if you want to be with the older team. And the day she did that junior practice, and then she said to me, she came up, she was supposed to come to the senior practice because it was all planned, she was going to do both. She came up to the senior practice, and she said, you know, I need to go get food. I haven't eaten all day. I'm not ready to practice with the seniors. I'll go home and come back and be. I said, no, you can go home. And she said, what? I said, yeah, you can go home. You don't have to come back. And she said, well, no, I get it. I said, no, you come back next year. You're obviously not ready for it this year. And so that was a year delay before she came back in that little story. But I think that the environment was one that people who wanted to take advantage of it could take advantage of it. And it also attracted other people. Like the problem was, as I said earlier, we had a lot of people want to come and move to Mission that I tried to fight, and any that I found out early enough to fight, or at least discourage. There's some very famous people out here and from some other schools who came to me and said, I'm coming to your school. And I said, oh, please don't. Please don't. You can get what you need where you are. Try to get what you need where you are. We don't need, I didn't say it this way, but we don't need the headache.
Right.
People coming.
So at Heritage, you end up winning 3 provincial championships at Heritage?
Yes. No. I won two at Heritage, and then I got the SFU job, and they won another one after I left.
So Frank Chen, who was a big part of your program, along with Mike Miller. We also had Mike McNeil in there as well for a little bit, right? He coached with you guys a little bit.
Mike didn't coach with us. He was in the school and he coached. He certainly did a lot of chatting with the kids and motivation with the kids. I mean, he did some of the weight stuff. Mike was very good at weights and technique, and did some of that with the kids. And so he was in the school, yes. And Frank came when Mike Miller came to me and said that he wasn't going to be able to do this anymore. And Frank then got hired around that time, and Frank came in and was my assistant there for a couple of years.
So you went ahead to get two at Heritage, and then the Simon Fraser job opens up because Allison leaves Simon. Tell us about that process, because I don't think it was a straight line situation. What motivated you to go try out to see if you could get the job, and then what was the process like in getting the job?
I had always thought I would go back to Fraser Valley College, because when I did the Fraser Valley for 2 years and Mike left, I had was offered the job, and I didn't take it because I had a grade 10 group that was going to senior, and I'd promised them that I was going to do senior with them. And they said to me, well, we might hire somebody and not be able to come back in 2 years and say, you want this job? And I said, yeah, I get that and all that. But so I had kind of thinking about coaching a college level team. When the SFU job came open, my daughter had been recruited to SFU the year before. And obviously Teresa had been there for 4 years. They kind of convinced me to apply, and I kind of debated. And then the last day of school, Danny said to me, have you applied for the job? And I said, no, I didn't put in my application. I kind of filled it out in case, but no, I didn't apply. And she said, well, you're being silly. You should apply. She said, if I said, they're never going to hire a male. And I don't know if I can do this. And she said, well, you can do this and you should apply, because you can always draw back later if you've applied and you decide you don't want to do it. But if you don't apply, you can't even have that choice later down the road. You've already finished the piece. And I don't know, I think Teresa called me somewhere in there and backed her up and said, you should do this. And anyway, I put my application in, and then I got an interview, and then it happened.
So you got the interview. There's a famous story of you didn't know how to use a computer, but you needed to put together a slideshow. So you had Frank help you out. So tell us a little bit about that story and how your interview went. Tell us the process.
Well, one of my weaknesses from a very early age, I was very shy, and I was very introverted, and I didn't like speaking in front of people at all. And I don't even like walking in front of people. I don't even like walking in front of bleachers. When I got to teaching, when I went to teaching, my siblings all bugged me and said, what are you doing? Like, how are you going to talk in front of a class? And so anyway, I was extremely nervous about the interview. And Frank and I said to Frank something about it. I said, we need a PowerPoint. I was just to do a presentation in front of 20 people. And I said, if we did the PowerPoint, maybe they could be focused on it and they wouldn't see me, and I'd be at the back. They'd put it at the front, put me at the back, and they'd be looking at it. And yeah, so anyway, that's what we did. And we worked, and it was like, I think I called it when it's finished. I finally said the final midnight version of PowerPoint, whatever, still on my computer. And we did that, and I went and did that presentation, and it kind of, it went from there.
So you get offered the job.
They offered the job to somebody else, and then they declined it, and then they turned around and offered it to me a couple of days later, and I got it.
So you step right in. You're not really sure how you're going to do, and the first year, I believe you don't lose. Correct? You go undefeated.
Well, I was unbelievably lucky to get the job, and I was unbelievably lucky with the team that was there. Allison had recruited an outstanding group, very skilled, very competitive. in the first year in the CIS when they had come, they had a lot of misfortune with some injuries, and it's like nothing went right, and the league was even rigged against them a bit in terms of I don't remember exactly, but I know most of the games were on the road, if not all of them were on the road, and it was trying for them all. When I got the job, it was they had a lot to prove. And it was just a very small team. I got hired in June. The recruiting was all done. The people that had been on the recruiting list had already committed to other schools. They knew I had been shortlisted for the job and asked me if I was getting it when the recruiting process was on. And I said, I don't know. And I was coaching them at the under-19 provincial team at the time. And anyway, the recruiting season was over. Very small core of kids. Few of the kids that were there that had been kind of injured the year before didn't come back, and they just had a lot to prove, and everything just kind of went right because of that. I didn't screw it up, but I'm really not responsible for what happened in the sense of they were skilled, they were good. I was really lucky. Lenny Kramer helped me coach that year, and I can remember driving up to SFU thinking, is anything I do going to work? At the high school level I've tried some of these things on the provincial team that summer just to try to get ready. And I think it was the under-19 provincial team in those days. So they were university kids. But Lenny Kramer helped me, and Lenny Kramer was very competitive, just a fiery, competitive person. And it was great because if I used to think one of my meetings, I coach to the rules. So if the rules say this is how much physical contact there should be, that's where I coach to. But in reality, many people who coach beyond the rules of physical contact have more success because the refs don't call all the physical contact that exists. So Lanny was instrumental in helping set a defensive tenacity and other things. And so it just all worked out.
So how many years did you guys play in the CIS?
I was there for 9 years in the CIS.
And for all 9 years, you guys were ranked in the top 4, I would imagine, pretty much the entire time. What you had 5 national championships?
Yes.
So 5 national championships. And so clearly everything's going your way, and you're supposed to have the entire team back in your 5th national championship. And the school decides they're going NCAA, and you essentially lose half your team. So instead of having pretty much a really easy season where you wouldn't have too many challenges, you end up going to play in the Div 2 level in America, but you also lose a lot of your best players. Luckily, you had a phenomenal recruiting class the year before, so you had 3 freshmen that were very good that could kind of lead you into the new direction. Talk about the mental aspect of going from, winning a national championship by quite a bit, having a pretty good season, thinking the world is your oyster, and then all of a sudden the world is not your oyster. You are going to America and your team is not as good as you thought it would be.
Well, you summarized that up. We did win the national championship. We were supposed to graduate 2. We were supposed to return 11. It became a nightmare. We'd recruited a couple of kids. We ended up losing 9 kids. And it was ugly when it was happening. There was a lot of parents upset with us leaving. There was concerns about us. I had concerns about us leaving for some financial reasons. And I just said to the team, we're not talking about this. This is, and it was a mistake on my part in the hindsight that it kind of went underground. People kept talking about it, but made sure I didn't hear it. And so by the end of the year, there was, some headspaces around what people were going to do and what have you. And it wasn't good. When we went to the NCAA, it was good in the sense that it gave us a common bonding theme of we were headed to some badlands, some tough times, some turmoil, some smashing in your guts, competitive situations with people who aren't ready. I guess I could sum it up best by saying I had recruited Becca Langmead while we were in the CIS. Becca, I'd recruited. She's 6'5", Newfoundland kid who, as I saw her as a grade 9 in the Newfoundland team, and she was just a deer, a baby deer who couldn't stand up straight. And I watched her get a little better and a little better each year where she could stand up. And when I recruited her, I said, you're going to need to come and you'll need to redshirt our last year in the CIS. And then in the next year, you'll be able to be ready to play. And you'll have a good group of kids to learn under, because you're going to have 4 posts who are 4 or 5 posts that are pretty good. I mean, Anna Karasveld, Nayo Raincock-Akunwe, Kate Hole, Muddy Hutzler, Laurel Wagle. You're gonna mentor under, and you'll be ready. And anyway, what happened was they all weren't eligible except for Anna. And Becca called me, I guess, and said, "You guys are leaving a year early. I hear you're going a year early. What's happening?" She said, "I'm not ready to play next year. Am I going to have to play?" And I said, "We only have 8 players. I think you're going to have to play." When we played in Alaska, there's a great video clip. Alaska does a great job. It's almost like a regular TV crew. And Becca gets hit in the Alaska game by a girl and knocked against the wall. And the Alaska guy goes, "Oh my goodness, I think she's going to have to get stronger because she's not going to survive this."
I remember when you signed her, it was a big signing because it was like, oh my goodness, you're going to have all these kids graduate. She'll redshirt, and then she'll have another 5 years after that. And by the 5th year, she's going to be spectacular. And then she went up and she ended up having to play a ton of minutes as a freshman. So instead of never playing, she played a ton of minutes as a freshman. That was an interesting one for sure. So you go there, you have 3 kids, I believe, in the top 5 in minutes per game in your first year. And they play huge minutes, and your team actually ends up doing okay considering the fact that you lost pretty much your entire team. Talk about how kind of I'm assuming there was some sort of satisfaction knowing that you did okay considering it didn't look good at the beginning.
Well, when you're underdogs, I mean, it's easy to build a team around certain things, I believe. You can build around striving for this. We were striving for survival. We were striving for respectability. We were striving to make the playoffs. We made the playoffs that year. We came 8th, and 8th is not where we would want to be right now, but 8th was pretty exciting that year. We made 8th.
Right.
And coincidentally, it's kind of funny. I think we're the only team in the GNAC to have made the playoffs every year since the playoffs were created in the GNAC. I think we're the only team, which is mind-boggling because there's some great programs in the GNAC.
Right.
But we have made the playoffs every year. We were lucky the first year it was 8 that got in, because the next year they changed it to only 6 getting in. And thank goodness we were then moved up to 6 the next year. And then we've moved up ever since a little bit. But it was a challenge. We all knew it was there. We all were kind of ready for it. The biggest thing was recruiting just became extremely difficult when we moved south. That first year, we'd already had the commits from the year before who knew we were having 1 year of CIS left. Now U-Sport, but since then it became a huge challenge.
Right, and so you end up that group of 3. They end up taking you to your best season so far in the Div 2, correct? Tell us what it was like to have that group go through.
Sorry, we've had 2 Sweet 16 seasons where we made Sweet 16. That was one of them. And unfortunately, if the plan had gone according to how it was supposed to go, that would have not been their final year, because they were all going to redshirt one of the 2 last years in the CIS. Each was going to redshirt in one different year. But as it turned out, none of them redshirted in the year because they found out it was going to be the last year, and they thought it would be unique to be able to play in that environment. So they didn't do their redshirt year. Because I think that team had a lot of potential, and I think we were inexperienced away from maximizing that potential. It's just too bad. The timing was just too bad for them. But they were a good core group, and they had a lot of success, and they won some big games against good opposition in testing gyms. It was good. Absolutely.
And so you keep going, and now you got a pretty good team coming in next year. Kind of give us like a preview of next year's team and how that team's going to look.
Well, I'm very excited about next year's team. I mean, we return everybody except for Teddy Drynan and Justina Chan, and everybody else is back. I think we are I think I've made a jump in my coaching philosophy to change a piece that I think we really need to change. And we're really looking forward to a year, but it's certainly going to be a unique year because, as you know, the NCAA has cut back on non-conference games and cut schedules back down about a third, so much fewer games. And right now we're trying to scramble and try to find the last couple of games, but it's challenging because each of the leagues have cut off their max totals. But saying that, I think we got a great group who are keen, who are hardworking. We're going to be fit. I think we're going to be able to play a more aggressive defensive style than we played. I'm very optimistic.
So you're talking like you're going to be trapping, you're going to be pressing. What are we talking about?
I think we need to pick up and play full court. I think we need to try to take teams out of what they want to do more than we have. I think we've more reacted to what teams do and try to handle things defensively. And I think we need to be on defense, be a little more offensively dictating, be offensive in the offensive and being sense, get in their face, change what they want to do, and not allow them to run what they want to run. So
you end up, it sounds, I'm excited to watch it, to be honest with you. Have you talked about the challenge of recruiting? What has created the challenge of recruiting? And because you guys don't really play anybody locally, do you think people kind of don't really understand the league at all when they're watching locally, or what do you think is causing these challenges?
I think that there's a pretty united front in Canada that if you're going to play in the States, then why not go Division I? Why go Division II? I don't think people understand the caliber of Division II that we see and play against. I think that I think there's a concerted message. I think that I'm not a very good recruiter. So I think that that's certainly a factor. I think I think a combination of all those things.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a very interesting thing because, you know, I think when kids have to decide what they want to do for school, they kind of have to decide, you know, I remember talking to Ashley Burke when she went to Gonzaga when they weren't very good, and they, you know, I said to her, I said, you know, what's the deal here? I just saw, you know, you're pretty good. I just saw Jody Bell play at Texas. You know, she doesn't get to play, but she gets to play at Texas. She goes, Anthony, it's very simple. When I play, I want to play the whole game, and I want to play, and I don't really care what happens. I'm not going to go play at a level where I'm not going to get any minutes. She's like, Jody Bell and I are very similar. She could be doing what I'm doing at Gonzaga, and I could probably be doing what she's doing at Texas. But for me, I'm not a bench sitter. I don't want to sit on the bench. So the thing for you is it's kind of like, yeah, sure, you can go to a decent Div 1 team, but very few kids from BC. You know, you got an Ace Koenig, you got a Taya Hansen. Other than that, nobody's playing really on a winning team that's actually doing any winning. So do you actually want to be on a team that's winning? Do you want to play on a team that's winning? Or do you want to just be on any team and don't really care if you win? And so the challenge becomes, if you actually want to play and you want to win, this is actually probably the right spot for you. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, I think your statement about, I think it's really important that people understand themselves. And I think it's really important that they try to find a fit to who they are and what they want. And you certainly, I don't think kids know, well, some kids don't know what it would feel like. They've only ever just played and always played. You see much less role playing now than you used to see. And so I think that finding that fit is a bit of a challenge. But I do think you're right in the sense that, I mean, over 1,000 kids are in the portal transferring schools this year in women's basketball. I hate to think what it is in men's basketball, but the portal in the NCAA is a system whereby athletes can throw their name in to say, I want to change schools. And it's just really easy to change if you're not 100% happy with everything that's going on, and kids don't see themselves developing the way they used to. You know, Ashley Burke, to say that she wanted to play all the time, you know, that's interesting because that's kind of today's mentality in terms of that's 20 years ago. And she's perfectly right. Jody Bell was a Canadian junior national all-star player when she went to Texas, right?
And her thing was, I get to play in the Final Four, but I'm not
Exactly.
playing, but I'm in the Final Four.
Well, you look at Christine Rigby, who played for me on the under 19 team, who played at Lambert. No, she played at Douglas. She's 6'5", 6'6". She goes to Santa Clara, and she's a league all-star and MVP, and she transferred to UConn in her third year. And she goes to UConn, and she never plays again. She plays a minute and a half in a game, but she got to play at UConn. So what do you fit? What do you want? What are you looking for? I've tried to tell recruits, I think we're a place where you can maximize your potential. I think one of the most important things you should look at in programs is, do people get better from one year to the next? If you see places where that can happen, I think you can take advantage of that. It doesn't happen for everybody, because not everybody comes with the same motivation and the same pieces. And university basketball is a huge jump from high school basketball. And therefore, some people aren't best suited for that jump. And basketball isn't the best thing in their new future when they go to university. There's better choices for them. And you might go there and discover that, but it's a challenge.
So, as someone who knows you pretty well, I've seen you take Bruce Springsteen and his music and the words behind his music and kind of imprint them on your team. Talk about what Springsteen has had as an impact on your group, and how you found ways to kind of use it as motivation to your team, and then also give them a little culture on what old school music is.
Well, I like music a lot. We play music at all practices because it's good to have the noise distraction and have them have to talk over the noise, but it's also good to have a music environment. We used to really use music a lot in ropes, so that some of the songs in ropes was in the NCAA is interesting because you're not allowed to work out the athletes all year round. And at the beginning of the year, you're only allowed 8 hours and only 2 with a basketball and all these rules. And so we do an awful lot of 6 hours of stuff without, and we would play music in that to pick up tempo and energy and all those kinds of things. Badlands is a famous Bruce Springsteen song, and it's about dealing with hardship. It's about dealing with ordeal. It's about facing the adversity that you face in your life and trying to get it under control and being able to get out on the road and survive it. And yes, it's a song, and yes, I've got a copy of it with all the proper lyrics, but all the made up, what does this really refer to basketball pieces. I think many of the kids identify with that a fair bit. I certainly get a call every once in a while from, I'm in my car, I'm driving down the highway, and Springsteen Badlands just came on, and I can't help but think about all the basketball we did over this. And I get that quite a bit, actually. So I think that it's important to have passions, and I think that people can see those passions come to fruition in different ways, and it's just who you are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple last questions here. I've always asked everybody, if you go back in time and change anything or adjust anything or give young Bruce a little bit of advice, what would it be? So you've obviously had a very full career, but at some point anywhere in there, would you go back and give yourself a little bit of advice and say, hey, maybe you should try this instead?
I certainly would. I think as a young, up to the time I was about 13 or 14, I was a motivated, go-getter kind of kid. And I was still shy, but I was motivated. After that, I kind of think that I never tried to tackle my weaknesses. I tried to hide my weaknesses. And I guess part of that was being fearful of failure. So I wish I would tell the young me to know yourself, try to know yourself better. Rather than hide your weaknesses and try to camouflage them so the world can't see them, go attack them and deal with them and overcome them. I have a quote that I've given every team I've ever coached about failure and why just a little failure, grand failure. I believe I might have got it at an SFU clinic with Allison McNeil when I was a young coach. But I laugh when I give it because it's kind of could be to me of you coward, you never were willing to deal with your big failures. To the point where I said earlier, I don't think I'm a great recruiter. Well, I don't think I'm a great recruiter because I'm afraid of failure. I don't think I'm a great coach because I'm not good at speaking in front of people very well. When I was young, I had laryngitis every time there was a presentation at school. And I couldn't talk in front of the class because I got laryngitis, and I would get out of it every time. And I found out it worked, and it became great, and I'd use it all the time. And rather than do the presentation, I avoided it. In school, I didn't want to be a suckle goody-goody. When I moved to BC, I got into a group of people that weren't high school achievers, and I didn't want to be the suckle, get the A's and look like I cared, but I didn't want to appear stupid. So I tried to just, how do I make sure I stay in that C+, okay, maybe a B- isn't too embarrassing area, and kind of walk that line. And I think that's a shame.
So, I mean, realistically, usually the next question I ask is what type of adversity have you overcome? And I mean, I think, the fact that we're speaking right now means you've kind of gotten over your speaking issue that you have. You've probably given more clinics for coaching than any coach in our province for coaching clinics. So realistically, you've kind of come over that adversity that, at one point you were faking laryngitis, and now you've actually gone out and done that. I think, what you talked about, being scared of failure, is kind of a unique thing because it's not a unique thing. It's kind of like everybody's kind of got that issue. Like, how much are we really willing to put ourselves out there? But you can make the argument that some of your best players you've ever gotten, you had no business getting as a recruiter. So the fact that you did actually trust the process and actually go out and try means you actually have overcome that. So that's another adversity thing that's kind of cool. Last question will now be, when you were coaching, who are some of the coaches that you looked up to and helped you take your coaching to the next level?
Well, that's an interesting one because I think I knew nothing about basketball, so I drew on a lot of coaches for different pieces of different puzzles. Certainly early on, Barry Stewart was a close guy who talked way more than I liked to in games. I never talked. I came from the volleyball background where you would just sit there and you didn't say anything, weren't allowed to say anything. I think that in my early years, Allison McNeil was, the height of motivation and the height of women's basketball in our province. And I certainly went to every SFU game that I could over the years, and took as many people with me as I could go. And watching the energy and camaraderie of team and a sense of togetherness was an important piece that I got from it. I certainly early on, I was a big advocate of motion offense. And so I watched all of the Bobby Knight tapes and later do all kinds of different coaches over the years. But I think I went to every SFU clinic that ever happened in my early days, and they were all instrumental in being a factor in my coaching. And then I think, even I don't go to a game where I don't watch the other coach and say, what are they doing better than I'm doing? What piece do they have? And so whether it's, Western Washington's a big rivalry of ours, but Carmen Dolfo coaches in a way significantly different than I do. And I watch and go, what are those pieces of the puzzle that I should take? And Ryan in Alaska, Kevin in Montana, they all have interesting pieces that I don't have. And I would say every day I self-evaluate and where do I need to change? Where do I need to change? Where do we need to go to get better? We're still trying to hide some pieces from the world, and how do we not do that and become a little broader? And
that actually goes back to you had a philosophy when you were at Heritage. You had 2 words. It was essentially one of them. I mean, give me the breakdown. So it was Shibumi, and you had another one, and it came down to continual improvement, right? Give me the quick version of what those two words were and what they meant, and how they've kind of impacted your coaching career.
Well, the two words were Shibumi and Kaizen. Shibumi, I had read a book that I really liked about Shibumi, about the all wonderful espionage undercover guy, kind of satirical, funny, good book on espionage, kind of in a way. And anyway, Shibumi became an acronym. And so Shibumi was supposed to be a self-actualized person. And I thought most kids aren't going to get what a self-actualized person is. And I certainly am not going to be able to model it. And so we made an acronym: success, hustle, intensity, best you can be, unity and understanding, motivation, and integrity was the last one. Intensity was the first one, sorry. And actually a couple kids changed one of the pieces along the way. They wanted to best you can be to turn into building character. And that became because of a conversation that Amanda Laszlo, Julie Kite, and Teresa Kleindienst had at 3 a.m. at the BCs when we had lost a game. But anyway, I didn't think that Shibumi was the goal of everybody to strive for. And I didn't think our fun kids at Heritage could have Shibumi on their shirts, because they're not even close to Shibumi, nor should they be close to Shibumi. They're not committed, they're not dedicated, they're not trying to go down this path. So we needed a word that would suit them. And in my readings, of course, Kaizen is a Japanese term for people who are self-betterment, is the literal translation, seeking self-betterment. And what better word for a group of kids than we are trying to get better? We're in the constant trying to get better. So we made Kaizen our fun team slogan, and we did shirts up with Kaizen and Japanese print and all that. And we had Shibumi ones, obviously, for the other group.
And it's worked to this day. Last piece, I don't know, I've said that 4 times already, but I forgot about the fact that after you guys won a national championship when you were in the CIS, you had an opportunity to go play at the University of Connecticut for a game when they had just come off a national championship. So it was essentially the Canadian national champion against the American national champion, but you were missing a couple of your players that year because they had all graduated. But talk about the experience of actually going there, probably the most fans anybody from Canada has ever played in front of as a team. You go to Connecticut, you go there, talk about that experience real quick.
I was driving down the highway in Ontario, I want to say May the 5th or something, for the OBAs, trying to look to recruit some players. And I got a phone call from a travel guy who arranged trips all the time of American big teams to come to Canada. We had played Texas the year before in our gym, and Texas was 4 in the country. And we actually, we were in a tight game with a little while left, and we got it down to 4 points with I don't know what left, and they had to put all their starters back in the game anyway. And he thought that was so exciting and so fantastic. And he said, "I got a proposition for you. UConn's looking for a preseason game next year. I'm promoting undefeated SFU versus undefeated UConn." I said, "Oh, well, that's great. Why didn't they do it this year? We were losing Marin and Morgan and Danny that year. Devin was injured, so we weren't losing her. She was that year, but she would have been injured or whatever." So anyway, I said, "Yikes, not the right year for it." And he said, "Well, are you sure?" And I said, "Well, give me a second. This really isn't fair to be my decision. This isn't about me. Just a second. Let me call you back in an hour." I got off the phone. I phoned Devin Campbell. I said, "Devin Campbell, we have a chance to play UConn and UConn next year. What do you think?" And she said, "Really? Yes. I said, "You realize we're not going to be quite as good as we were this year?" And she goes, no problem, whatever. We should do this." I believe I talked to somebody else too, but I forget. But anyway, they wanted to do it. I called Nels back and said, "Yeah, we're in. Count us in. What are you thinking?" He said, he gave me this astronomical figure of money that they'd give us as a guarantee. $20,000 something or whatever. It was ridiculous for a women's basketball team, I thought. And then I said, it's a long way to go for one game. Maybe we could wangle another game somehow. And he said, "Well, we'll look into it." So then I said, "Let's talk when I get back money." We talked. We went. We also played Massachusetts. All of our posts were injured when we went. Julia Wilson got injured. I want to say, I forget it, who was all there. I think Brittany Fraser was injured and didn't come. I think a couple of others were injured. We were tiny. We have a couple of great pictures of Lenny Gibbons checking a person who looks like a giant over top of her. The funniest part of the game, well, it was great. We drive in and so first of all, they moved the game off campus. It's going to be at Stores. Now they're going to move it to Harvard Civic Center because we're going to have too many people for Stores. Stores only holds like 6,000, 7,000. We want to put it in the Harvard Civic Center. Are you okay? Sure, yeah, we'll go for that. Put it in the Harvard Center. We're in a bus. We drive into Harvard Center. They open the big doors. You drive right into the stadium, right? You drive right up to your locker room. Somebody greets me and says, "Hello, I'm so-and-so. I am so-and-so's assistant here who's looking after you." And they introduce the assistant, says, "And I am so-and-so, and my job is for him to look after you." And so I meet three people who are looking after each other to look after us. We go into the change rooms, and of course, it's like 4 rooms with every fantastic thing you can imagine. We go out on the floor to warm up. We play. Anyway, I'm thinking, God, I hope they're pressing us, because the only way I can imagine us having any success is if we can handle the press. We can have some openings to get a shot off, because I don't see how we're going to get down in quarter court offense and get a shot off, right?
Yeah.
And sure enough, they're pressing us. We go. I don't remember they scored first. I believe we scored second. Anyway, the game's 3-2 for them. I turned to Frank Chan in the stands, and Frank's so excited to come on this trip with us, and we brought him as a reward for all of what he had done for us earlier. And he had gone to all of UConn's practices, where we went and played UMass. He went to UConn's practice. When we went to New York City, the day we went to New York City, he went to UConn's practice. Anyway, I turned to Frank. I said, "Frank, get a picture, because we're going to be winning this game because they're pressing us. We're going to get the 3 on the reversal on the weak side of the far end of the floor. And when we hit it, we'll be up 5-3, right? Or 5-4, I think it was. I forget. I think it was 4. I think it was 4-2 or whatever. Anyway, bang, 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 pass, hit. We hit the shot. We're winning the game. We have a picture of us winning at UConn.
There you go. We'll take it.
At halftime, we were only down like 12 at halftime, and we're going off, and these guys in the stands are like high-fiving me, going, "You guys are great. You're the littlest team we've ever seen, and you're so good." And I don't think we saw a rebound or a score in the 3rd and 4th quarter. He reamed them or something.
I'm sure a lot of people felt that way when they played you guys back then. So anyway, well, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We'll get this out there, and hopefully some people get some great tidbits. I thought there was some great stuff today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Take care.